Let us pray.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you so much for allowing us to see another Sabbath day. God, I thank you for this meeting that we could come together on this platform together and just to learn more about you and your will for us. I pray that your Holy Spirit will convict each of our hearts, God, and I pray that from this time together, we will see how we're benefited by being here. So I pray a special blessing on the speaker and all the participants who are joining this morning. And we just thank you, God, for your goodness in our lives and also through this meeting together. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you. And today we are blessed to have Brother Donald Miller with us. He has come and shared with us before. And today he will be sharing on diabetes, its prevention and reversal. So for those of you who are new with us, Brother Miller has a vast background in medical missionary work. He is a veteran of the Marine Corps, having served for over 20 years. And then next, he worked at Uchee Pines Institute with doctors Agatha and Calvin Thrash. Excuse my voice. With doctors Thrash, and continued working there for 30 years and continues to teach there. He now travels internationally teaching the medical missionary work, the health message, and we're so grateful to have him here with us today. So, Brother Miller,
Yes,
you may begin.
I'm going to begin then. Okay, just lay the foundation. We're going to talk about the two major types of diabetes. That's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Sort of the pathophysiology, why you get these disease, some of the predictors that you're going to get the disease, some of the diagnostics that you can do easily to find out whether you have the disease or not, what you can do to some of the ramifications of the disease, what you can do to treat the disease, and more importantly, what you can do to prevent the disease. And basically, the prevention is just the treatment is just start practicing the prevention. Nothing really changes. So, like I said, there's two types of diabetes, two main types. There's gestational and other types of diabetes, but we're talking about the two. When they discovered what diabetes was back in the olden days, the doctors would notice that ants seemed to like urine of people who had this strange disease. So the diagnostics that the doctors would do back then would they take a urine sample, poke their finger in it, and they would taste it. If it was sweet, diabetes, sugar, mellitus flowing through. That's what it basically means. Well, thankfully, we've come a lot further than that now. Now we can use urine dipsticks, put a dipstick in the urine to see how much glucose you're dumping. But even more importantly, we can do blood tests. Trouble is, if you just do a normal blood test, it's got to be fasting. And I don't know too many people who want to go 12 hours without eating. And but a good fasting blood sugar will be somewhere between 72 and 100. The lower, really, the better. But now they've got a new type of a test called hemoglobin A1C. You see, sugar is sticky and it sticks to the plasma cells. And so they can look back 3 months in the past, see if you've been good or not. If your A1C is 4 to 5.6, you're good to go. That's going to be pretty normal. If you're 5.7 to 6.4, that is the name for it, pre-diabetic. At that point, you better get on program because if you go over to 6.5, you've got diabetes. Now, let's look at the first type. It's type 1 diabetes. We also call that juvenile diabetes because normally it manifests itself in the youth, or it can also be called insulin-dependent diabetes. So what is the pathophysiology? What causes type 1 diabetes? You ask the normal person on the street, they're going to say, well, it's genetics. Well, it's true, it can be genetics, but they did an interesting study. They took some mice that they had genetically predisposed to be diabetic. That means they found some diabetic mice, got them married off to each other. They had some babies. They kept doing this until they had a whole population of mice that were genetically predisposed to diabetes. Then they did an experiment. They had a bunch of little mouse pups born, and in one group of mouse pups, they received their own mother's milk. How much diabetes did they get? None out of that group. The second group, they were artificially fed milk from cows.
Or now it's live.
What?
Oh, it's live.
Am I missing something? Someone's talking back there. Okay. So 100% of those who had dairy milk got the diabetes. So basically, one of the pathophysiologies of type 1 diabetes is early exposure to cow's milk. Say, oh, my child was on formula. Read the formula. Almost everyone is going to have cow's milk in it. So, and now, certain population groups are more sensitive to casein and even lactose than other population groups. If you're European, about 50% of the people are going to be sensitive. If you are Asian, 90 to 95%. If you are African origin, 95 to 100% of the people are going to be sensitive to cow's milk. Just make the general thing cow's milk. Another cause or pathophysiology is a recent infection. Something is down into the pancreas and destroys the cells that make the insulin. In the Townsend medical letter, it's something interesting. It says cow's milk, especially processed cow's milk. That means any other form that milk's going to come in, your ice cream, your cheese, whatever else, is a cause of childhood diabetes. But look at the very bottom, it says mood swings, depression, irritability, and allergies. The first three of those four is going to look a whole lot like ADHD, and some doctors are saying that's one of the causes. Okay, now get into this sensitivity to the casein. Casein is made up of a 17 amino acid peptide chain of amino acids that make up casein. But in nature, there is another 17 amino acid peptide chain that looks just like it, and that is the islets of Langerhans, the beta cells in the pancreas that make the insulin. Now, if you are sensitive to casein, your body is going to make an antibody that is going to attack that particular antigen that is, in this case, casein. So you drink some milk, and so your body puts out these antibodies. It's going to go and it's going to take care of the casein. Trouble is that those antibodies are still circulating through the system. They get down to Pancreas Town. They go down on the islets of Langerhans Street. They find the beta cells and they destroy those cells. And you now have an autoimmune disease. And the name of that autoimmune disease is type 1 diabetes. And so it's basically an autoimmune disease. What can you do about it? Now, if you listen to, and I do, great people, I don't know if they're still alive, the Heimlich, Dr. Heimlich and his wife, they're both doctors. They believe that even type 1 diabetes can be reversed. Now, I'm of the mind that there's not a disease in this world that cannot be cured. We just haven't found the cure. And the cure is not going to be found in your medicine cabinet. It's going to be found in nature. Let me just do an aside here. I was working at Riverside Farm in Zambia, teaching, medical missionary, the same thing like I'm doing right here. And one of my students, her name was Margaret. She was a master herbalist. She had found a combination of African herbs that would make a HIV positive person HIV negative. That means a cure for the precursor to AIDS. Trouble is, she died of brain malaria before she could release it. And we don't know what it was. Very sad. But there is a cure. Believe me, there's got to be a cure, or Satan is smarter than God. And I know that's not the truth. All right, now we got type 2 diabetes. The thing about type 2 diabetes, matter of fact, when I go to Africa, when I go to India, when I go to some parts of way Eastern Europe, like Siberia, you don't find diabetes. It's basically a disease of the West. But what we're finding now is the rates of diabetes are going up and up and up because our diets are getting further and further away from God's ideal for what He'd have us to eat. Now, in type 2 diabetes, the problem is not insulin. The problem is you're working your pancreas to death because it's got to keep putting out to try to get all that sugar out of your system. Now, there's another name we use for diabetes, and that is the metabolic syndrome. And so there are basically 6 steps in the metabolic syndrome. So you look at each one of these steps. I'm going to show you pictures and talk a little bit about these things. If you don't want to get diabetes, you don't want even one of these steps in the metabolic syndrome. The first one's going to be overweight. Overweight is almost always characteristic of type 2 diabetes. Doesn't have to be. I've known very skinny people with type 2 diabetes, but for the most part, it's going to be caused by overweight. So we've got to get the weight under control, and we'll be talking about that. But one of the best ways to get the weight under control is diet, eating more grains, more highly unrefined carbohydrates. That's one of the most powerful ways to get rid of that risk factor of diabetes. But if you are overweight, it'll lead to the second symptom or second step, and that would be carbohydrate intolerance. You've got so much refined carbohydrates going into your body, it's starting to rebel against those things. Some of the signs of carbohydrate intolerance is you're tired all the time, a fuzzy mind, bad time digesting, and also you crave sweets because your body is saying, I don't know why it's saying you want more sweets, because that's your problem in the first place. All right, so now we got carbohydrate intolerance. The next one's going to be insulin resistance. Now, insulin, and that is a long biological process, but basically insulin is the hormone that takes the sugar into your cell. On your normal plasma cell, there will be 20,000 receptor sites for insulin. Now, when I was in college, we called it the simple cell. It is everything but simple. Now you can get a PhD in cellular biology. It's amazing stuff. But if you start to get insulin resistant, it's going to go from 20,000, it might go down to 5,000. And now you're not getting enough sugar into your body. Right? At this point, we call this diabetes. But it doesn't end there. It goes from diabetes. That's the portal open. And we're looking at some of the other some of the other ramifications of diabetes. But heart disease, it's going to be right in there. Cancer, it's going to be right in there. So we got to stay away from those things. So this is the first step in the metabolic syndrome is overweight. Well, let's get into the first sign. The first sign is going to be, it's going to be overweight. It's going to be abdominal obesity. So you measure the men, if it over 40 inches around your waist, and we're not talking about the waist down where this guy's wearing his trousers. We're talking about up around the belly button. Women, 35. Over that, you've got the first step. If you are over those things right now, you've got your first step towards diabetes. Recommendation, you slim down some. Second step is going to be your body shape. Now, if you look at those two things, now I'm not saying anything wrong with pears and apples. Those are great foods. As a matter of fact, if you're overweight, start eating more pears and apples. when Dr. Agatha Thrash's son was getting a little bit chubby, she put him on for breakfast, nothing but apples. And he ate a lot of apples, but you can't eat more than 3 or 4, maybe 5, and then you're full. That's what you want to be. And he lost a huge amount of weight. So what we're talking about as far as body shape, if you're carrying your weight high above your waist, that's unhealthy. If you're carrying it below the waist, basically in your thighs, in your buttocks, that's a whole lot better. But all right, for me, I'd really rather have the banana shape, but I would go for the pear because it looks a little bit healthier than most people anyway. All right, the third sign of the metabolic syndrome is going to be high blood pressure, either a systolic over 130, a diastolic, that's your low number, over 85, or you're taking blood pressure medications. All of these things are going to be the third sign of metabolic syndrome. So if you've got high blood pressure, get out in the sunshine, get some exercise, take some natural diuretics, like drink your water, because that will make you diuresis. There's many good ways to do this. All right. The fourth sign, that's going to be abnormal blood fats. Now, one of the blood fats is your HDL. If men are under 40 and women are under 50 in the HDL, that's abnormal. You want that to be higher than this. And the fifth one is going to be triglycerides. The ideal triglycerides is your age, but 150, if you're over 150 triglycerides, that's abnormal, that's too high. And then the sixth one is going to be just your normal fasting blood sugar. If you're over 100 milligrams per deciliter, that's not a good thing. Now let's look at some diets. You've heard a lot nowadays about this thing called the paleo diet. The Paleolithic period was basically the Stone Age, is what it was. Now, I don't believe in the Stone Age, but I believe that there are people even today living on the paleo diet. If you go to places like the jungles of South America, people still live very, very primitive. You're not going to see an overweight one down there. You're not going to see people with high blood pressure, whatever else. So what did the paleo diet consist of? Basically, fruits and vegetables, nuts, wild game, and eggs. We're not talking about chicken eggs. They're talking about bird eggs. They would eat whatever they could get. Here's the benefits that we find today from the paleo diet. It improves the blood pressure. Okay. Second thing, decreases insulin secretion. So you're not, see, when you overproduce insulin, it makes you hungrier. And it takes your blood sugar down faster, which means you get hungrier and you got to have a burst of something to take you back up where you can think again. Increased insulin sensitivity. So now your cells, rather than having that 5,000 receptor sites, is becoming more sensitive to the insulin, and you don't need as much to do the same job. And improves lipid, which is fats profiles. So there's HDL, the LDL, the VLDL, and the triglycerides. Trouble is, we're not on the paleo diet. We're on the diet of civilized society, which is not a healthy diet, which basically consists of, matter of fact, I was teaching my students yesterday, the average adult diet in America consists of 7% fruits and vegetables, 93% processed foods and animal products. So high-fat foods, fast foods, animal foods, refined foods, this is not good. They raise the blood pressure. They increase insulin production because they're easily digested. The pancreas has to send in some insulin to try to bring down the blood sugars, decreases insulin sensitivity, says we're done with this thing, we're not going to go into those cells anymore, and raises the blood fats, especially the LDL and the VLDL. This is what this study says. The European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, they're looking at us. We're not the heroes of the world. the contemporary American diet figures centrally in the pathogenesis, beginning of numerous chronic diseases. They're called diseases of civilization. I tell people, and I travel around the world, I've been doing it for years and years. I tell people, I says, if you plan on living like an American, you can plan on getting sick like an American, and you can plan on dying like an American. It's a choice we make. I go to places in the world where you eat Eastern Europe, very simple food. I love the food there. Asia, in many places, well, Asia, you're going to get white rice, but I always go to places, they're always going to have whole rice, wonderful food. Now, I talked about the paleo diet. Okay, I would basically say, let's leave off the eggs, let's leave off the wild game, especially the tame game, and go with the nuts, the vegetables, and the fruits. This is the diet that's going to take care of your diabetes worries, your high blood pressure worries, your heart disease worries, your cancer worries, and so many other worries. You get back to the way God designed it in Genesis chapter 1. Now, again, I mentioned before, it's a long biological process, but insulin is what allows glucose to get into the cell. But now, what happens if the insulin the cells become resistant, you're not producing enough, the glucose is now trying to get into the cell, but what's happening? It can't get in because there's no way in. Now that cell, though, that cell is going to be sending signals to the brain, maybe all 30 trillion cells in your body, and that signal is always the same. It's going to be, feed me. It's not getting food, it needs food, so you're going to be excessively hungry all the time. They call it polyphagia. Now, if you're hungry all the time, you're going to be eating all the time, but that sugar's not going to be going into the cells, so it's going to be laying in the bloodstream. So now we're going to have a buildup of sugar in your bloodstream, and that's not healthy. And so when the body sees all of this sugar being built up in the bloodstream, it says, we got to get rid of this sugar. Well, diabetes mellitus, it's going to make you go to the toilet a lot. Polyuria, that's one of the signs of diabetes, is polyphagia, polyuria, and that's going to lead to the next one. Since your blood plasma is 90% water or more than that, and now your water table is starting to go down, it's going to sit and say, we need some water. So it sends a signal of dehydration to the brain, and it says, you're thirsty, drink some water. Polydipsia. These are 3 simple diagnostics of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Always hungry, always thirsty, always urinating, because the body just can't handle it. Now, again, like type 1 diabetes, many people say that genetics diabetes is genetic. Well, the Pima Indians is a very good case study on the fact that it is not genetics. Now, if any of you were former Marines, you know of at least one Pima Indian. He was one of the flag raisers on Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima. His name was Ira Hayes. He was a Pima Indian. Now, there were 6 people raising the flag. The very one in the front, his name was Harlan Block. Now, why am I telling you that? He was a Seventh-day Adventist. He never left that island alive. He was killed. Matter of fact, 3 of those men were killed before they even left the island. It was a terrible battle. But anyway, back to the genetics of the thing. About 700 years ago, the Pima Indians had lived in what is now southern Arizona, but they decided to split. And so they went in 2 different directions. One stayed in the Phoenix area. The others went down to southern Mexico. They had the same genetics. They were cousins. But here's what we find out today. Those who are living in America, in the Arizona Valley, over 50% of them have diabetes, frank diabetics. Down in New Mexico, the ones who are still farmers, they eat meat maybe every 2 or 3 months, very simple lifetime, less than 10% diabetes. So when you look at those numbers right there, you say, they've got the same genetics, but certainly different profiles on their disease front. Thinner in Mexico, a little bit chunkier in America, and disease rates. And if you've got diabetes, we're going to see in a little while, when that's what the next slide's up, what happens in people with diabetes. If you have excess sugar in your system, it hurts the entire body. Now, when I teach my students the laws of health, I have 4 basic laws. The first one is reason from cause to effect. Second one is the life is in the blood. The third one is perfect health requires perfect circulation. Well, it's the perfect circulation we're going to talk about here. You have very smooth cells on the inside of your blood vessels. One layer of cells, very good. And the blood just flies right on through. But if you have too much sugar in your blood, it starts to stick to the walls, which makes the walls sticky and will start to accumulate things like fat. We call that atherosclerosis. So one of the complications of diabetes is atherosclerosis, which is going to lead to another complication, which is heart attacks. Increased risk of heart attacks 200 to 400% if you are diabetic, which leads to another, probably the number 3 killer in America would be strokes. 200 to 400% increased risk of strokes if you're diabetics. Cancer, all forms of cancer are going to go higher, 150 to 200% higher if you are a diabetic. It's the number 1 cause of blindness in developed countries. Because if you've ever been to had a physical and the doctor looks back in the back of your eye, he's looking at those fine blood vessels. You destroy those, you destroy your sight. Another sign of a complication of diabetes is kidney disease. You increase your risk of kidney disease by 1,800% if you're a diabetic. And you do not want to go in 3 times to the hospital a week to have your blood cleaned out. Another sign would be wounds that will not heal. Perfect health requires perfect circulation. Diabetes cuts down circulation. You cannot heal wounds. If you've got wounds like this, the treatment of choice would be the next complication. That would be amputations. So, and then, of course, for men, impotence, and the list could go on and on. You do not want to get diabetes. So let's look at some of the causes of diabetes. And we basically already mentioned some, but we'll just go them again. One is going to be overweight. Now, we could fundamentally say it's really, we're going to be looking at the causes of overweight, because if you're overweight, that's a cause of diabetes. One of the main things is going to be too much fat in the diet. We love fat in the diet. If you go into fast foods are going to be fatty. But an interesting study was done some years ago. They took a group of people, they put them 2 weeks on a diet, 65% of the calories coming from fats. At the end of 2 weeks, everyone was pre-diabetic. Now, that's not the end of the world. Once you know you're pre-diabetic, you can reverse that immediately, and they just got off the fat. Because basically, we call it sugar diabetes because that's a symptom. Really, fat diabetes is more of a cause than the sugar is. Not saying that it's good to eat sugar, but fat is a problem. So that's one half of the study. The other half is they took another group of people, and for 11 weeks, they were taking a half a kilo of sugar a day, about a pound of sugar a day, refined carbohydrates, I guess we could put it that way. And at the end of the 11 weeks, they did not have one pre-diabetic. So, of course, I get immediately off all that sugar. That would make me sick as a dog. So where do we get most of our fat from? Butter and margarine, fried foods. If you're eating fried foods, you might as well be drinking the oil because it's got a lot of oil in the fried foods. Now, next time you go, let's say you get a French fry somewhere, just put it in a napkin, fold a napkin around it, just pat it, open it up and look at the napkin. It's going to have all kinds of fat in the napkin. If you boil a potato, all right, you're going to get about 8% protein. You're going to get, well, no, that was no one. 9% protein, 1% of fat, and 90% carbohydrate, 86 calories. If you fry those same potatoes, you've got a huge amount of fat, 60% of fat. So now, if I ask how many like French fries, almost everybody would raise their hands, or potato chips, or anything fried. We like it because that's why they sell it so well. All right, so we got butter, margarine, fried foods, salad oils, nut butters, peanut butter, seed butters, tahini. I love the things. I'm not having a weight problem, so I can eat, but you eat them moderation. Concentrated foods should be eaten sparingly. So fried salad oils, cooking fats, putting oil in our food, we just don't need it. Other factors in diabetes, trans fats, it's better to have hydrogenated fats than partially hydrogenated fats. This study right here, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, consumption of partially, and you like donuts, that's partially hydrogenated oils. It's responsible for approximately 40% of all cases of type 2 diabetes in the United States. Are they tasty? Yes, they're tasty. So was beer when I used to drink it. It's not tasty anymore. It's bad for us. Now, can we have any fat in a diet? Yes, we can have fat. Get the fats the way God made them. Sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, which are also great for other things, corn, avocados, nuts, and seeds. Matter of fact, the Lomond study, a small amounts of nuts a day is very protective against heart disease. Another sign or another cause of diabetes is not enough sunshine. Vitamin D is very important for the control of diabetes. One study showed that 60% of patients with type 2 diabetes have vitamin D deficiency. Now, in my years in the past here at UT Pines, we had 2 staff dependents, children who had type 1 diabetes. One, she was totally blind. She was very thin. She was very uncontrolled in her blood sugars and in her lifestyle. She died at, I think, 34. The other one, he doesn't even wear glasses, tall, healthy, strong, but he knew how to control his glucose intake even without insulin by sunshine, exercise, and diet. Matter of fact, here it is. Sunlight has an insulin-like effect on the body. It does it in the right proportion. It causes glycogen, which is stored sugar, to increase, which means you don't have as much circulating glucose, and enables blood sugar to be lowered. So we need to get more sunshine. Matter of fact, probably most people in America, if not the world today, are vitamin D deficient. We need more sunshine. All right, we need to control the weight. How do we control the weight? No animal products. Animal products are going to put weight on you. Another thing, now if you're battling weight, you should eat nothing after 3 o'clock in the afternoon because your body does not properly process food after 3 o'clock. So basically, now that doesn't mean eat 3 meals before 3 o'clock. It means go to a 2-meal plan. And the second plan, the second meal is a little bit later in the day. The 2-meal, and there are a host of benefits of the 2-meal plan. But if you're eating the 2-meal plan, 3-meal plan, don't go to the 5, 6, or 7-meal plan, which means eating between meals. Eat nothing between meals, which is amazing. I don't know that some diabetics still are not prescribed eating 5 smaller meals a day. That means the pancreas never gets a rest. Nothing between meals except for water. And water is extremely important, as we'll see in a moment. Some people live very sedentary lives. But here's what one study says. If we would exercise just 30 minutes a day, bring our weight down 5 to 10%, which isn't very much. There we go. We could reduce diabetes risk by 58%. And brothers and sisters, that's a no-brainer. 30 minutes a day. You've got what, 168 hours a week? We're just talking about investing 3.5 hours a week to exercise. Lose some of that weight and miss your appointment with diabetes. Exercise and diabetes reversal. Glucose is used more effectively after you've gotten exercise, and basically insulin improves in function many hours after you get some exercise. Now, you see what that guy's doing? That is called Nordic walking. I recommend you get some of those things, especially if you got weak ankles, knees, or hips. It's a great way to walk, increases your cardiovascular output, increases your caloric burning. It's wonderful. Water is, according to diabetes specialists, important for everybody. Your body's 70% water. Your blood's over 90%, your brain 85%, your muscles 70%, your bones 20 to 25%, your teeth 10%. You've got to have water. And insulin does not work well if you are underhydrated. Diabetics who overate late in the evening were associated with poor medical outcomes. Basically, if you're diabetic, you should not be eating late in the evening. We talked about hemoglobin A1C, and there's another very interesting blood marker called C-reactive protein. People who do not go to church on a regular basis have higher C-reactive protein. What does that mean? Diabetes is an inflammatory process. C-reactive protein measures inflammation in the body. So my recommendation is go to church. And it doesn't say which church. Go to church. Better to find one who's really follows the Bible. Okay, is there a treatment for diabetes? Yes, whole food, plant-based diet. That's simple as that, whole food. That means you didn't refine it in any way, shape, or form. You wash it, you might take the peelings off sometimes, but you want to have a whole food, plant-based diet. The more fiber you have in your diet, the slower glucose is going to be absorbed. That means the less hard pancreas is going to work to put out the glucose because the sugar's up here, insulin's going to go up here. You need to take your time. Studies of male health professionals and female nurses both found that a diet high in cereal fiber, your oats, your grains, was linked to a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. We need whole foods. Stay away from the refined foods. The white bread, get away from white bread. A diet low in cereal fiber, this is the other side of the picture, and it's going to cause your blood sugar to rise very fast. It's going to cause your glucose to rise, and then it's going to take it down very fast, and then you're going to have to eat something else to keep your energy up. Animal products have no fiber, none. All of your fiber comes from plants. Now, what we do, though, is we take our nice plants, we take them the fiber out of them. So then we got these white breads and white pastas and white rice and everything else in the world. When you're looking at a scientific study, look at how many people were in a study and how long the study went on. This is a big study, 64,000 plus women for 4.5 years. They consumed legumes, especially soybeans. It's interesting. Soybeans are very healthy, greatly reduce the risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. But they did a study with diabetics, type 1 diabetics, 18 of them, 19 type 2 diabetics. They put them on what's called the standard diabetic diet, but they included legumes. Now, Uchee Pines, if you are diabetic, you will get legumes usually every meal. Fava beans is one of the best ones. So for 6 weeks, they added legumes to their meals. At the end of the study, their average glucose levels, and they're checking that all the time, their average cholesterol levels, that's checked about once a week, and the average amount of urinary glucose being dumped out were all significantly lower than those in the standard diabetic diet. So eat your legumes, few beans, well cooked. Don't want to get uncooked beans. I was visiting my little sister in Maryland a few years ago when she'd had a physical. She had the blood work there, and the doctor had written on her blood work pre-diabetic. Now, usually she doesn't want to listen to me because I'm sort of strange about my diet. But she says, Donnie, what can I do? I just happen to have a bottle of cinnamon tablets. Cinnamon tablets lowers blood sugar levels. Cinnamon is anti-inflammatory. Diabetes is an inflammatory process. Improves sensitivity to insulin. I gave them to her. She went right out of the pre-diabetic down into the normal stage. But I said, look, the pill's not going to fix the problem. You've got to stay away from the fat in the diet also. And she's much more careful now. There's another one called ginger. It lowers blood sugars. It's also anti-inflammatory, but ginger also lowers cholesterol levels. Pretty good stuff. All right. If you're diabetic, you don't smoke. Well, no, if you're a human being still breathing good air, don't smoke. It destroys your vascular system. It paralyzes the muscles in your arteries. You've already got problems with circulation with diabetes. No tobacco. And avoid anger, worry, and stress. Whenever you get stressed, all the glycogen, the stored glucose, is turned back into glucose again. And there your blood sugar is going to go up. So worrying, getting stressed out, stress is chronic. Chronically, you're going to be dumping sugar to try to keep up with the stress. Now, 2 case histories right here at Uchee Pines. Do lifestyle changes really help with diabetes? All right, looking at 2 different patients. The first one, he was a man, quite overweight. He was a type 2 diabetic. Now, when they come in, we whole physical, we look at a lot of different things. He was taking 175 units of insulin. His glucose was way, way high. He had high blood pressure. He's on medication for blood pressure. He had already had 2 heart attacks. Remember, 200 to 400% increase in heart attacks. His blood fats were very high, which is bad. And his kidneys were insufficient. Kidney failure, remember, 1,800% increase in kidney problems. After 5 days, he was down to glucose 80 to 120. He'd already lost 10 pounds. He was down to 130 units of insulin. Now, you will probably not do that at home because at Uchee Pines, under doctor's care and constant monitoring, the first 5 days, they are fasting, a water fast. But they got to keep up with the blood pressure. They got to keep up with the blood sugar. They got to keep up with lots of different things. And by that time, usually the body is starting to say, hey, we need some glucose, and releasing some of those receptor sites in the cells to be able to take it up. All right. Now, after 2 weeks, he'd lost 15 pounds. He was down to 58 units of insulin. Now, we stayed a little bit longer, made 2 sessions. After 4 weeks, he was off of all insulin. He was off of all blood pressure medications, and he lost 24 pounds. Now the big test comes. He went home. He's got a choice to make when you go home. Am I going to stay with the program, or am I going to go back to the old way? He stayed with the program. In 5 months, he was off of all medications. His kidneys were working perfectly. His blood pressure was normal, and he had lost 60 pounds. This is not a fluke. Now, like I say, you're not going to do, most of you at home going to do the 5 days of fasting. But here's what I recommend. You go on for 5 days, a green diet. That means a salad diet. Now, you're not going to put a bunch of French dressing or a bunch of Thousand Island. You're going to use lemon juice, or I really like orange juice. Squeeze an orange. Very tasty. This is the type of dressing we should be having. Okay, the second patient. He was a man, age 22. He was a type 1 diabetic. He was taking 70 units of insulin a day, and his glucose was up and down like a roller coaster. After 2 weeks, he was down to 56 units of insulin, and his glucose now was stable. After 1 month, he was down to 32 units, which is pretty much as low as you're going to be going, and his glucose was remaining unstable. Now, again, like everybody else, he's got a choice to make. He can stay there and be perfectly healthy as far as health can be with type 1 diabetes, or he can go back to the old way of living and back with all the complications that come with the disease. So that was sort of a quick run through of diabetes. So if there's any questions or comments, I do have the sermon here at Uchee Pines in a little bit, but we can answer some questions or whatever.
All right. Thank you, Brother Miller, for that very informative presentation. I definitely learned a lot. I thought, especially for type 1, that was caused by genetics. And I felt, oh, that's so unfortunate, but it's good to hear that even type 1 can be reversed as well. So are there any questions from the participants? Feel free to raise your hand, your virtual hand, or unmute yourself. Okay, so in the chat, it says, my friend is very slim. He is a diabetic. I cannot imagine him losing any weight. If he changes his diet, wouldn't he lose more? What do you think about that?
Is he type 2 diabetic?
Okay, so NP, is he type 2 diabetic?
That's the question.
Yeah, right. The question came from the chat. Yes, he's type 2 diabetic, the person says.
Okay, like I said in the program, all diabetics are not overweight. But here's what you need to do. In 1999, I'm 6 feet tall. I weighed 119 pounds. That is very, very, that's very thin. Both Dr. Agatha and Dr. Calvin says, Brother Don, you need to start eating a third meal. You need to start exercising more because muscles are heavier than fat. And you need to, and they put me on evening primrose oil. Usually women get on that, but they put me on evening primrose oil. And I gain weight right back up. So basically, what he needs to do is he needs to exercise, or this person needs to exercise, and eat the third meal, but the third meal's got to be a small meal. But if he's diabetic, he can eat fat in the whole food process. Eat avocado. If we have a patient here at Uchee Pines who's underweight, they get a half avocado every day at lunch. I think almost every meal. You can eat olives. You can eat because it's a bound fat. It's not a free fat. Free fat is what the problem is. Eat some nuts. Eat some seeds. Just not the butters that you make from those things, and start getting the exercise. The time of year when you can put on the most muscle mass is July, because you got the most intense sunshine. He needs to be getting outside and getting exercise outside. And he will gain weight. But he doesn't want to gain weight around the middle. He wants to gain muscle mass and endurance. And that's what he's going to get from those things. Now, granted, some people are very tough on gaining weight, but it can happen. But the good news is a thin person lives a lot longer than a thick person.
Okay, thank you, Brother Miller. Another question is, at what point can the patient wean themselves off treatment without the doctor's advice?
Well, that's what I always say. What I always ask, I would ask this person this question: how often do you see your doctor? If it's every 6 months, then that's a little bit long. But if you can go in there anytime, if they have a particular time when they're going to get tested periodically, the doctor will see, whoa, something's happening here. Let's take you off some of this insulin here. So I would never say get off your medication. That said, we have had patients with diabetes come to UT Pines and says, oh, I left all my medications at home because I was coming to UT Pines. Well, that makes people a little bit nervous here. But if you get right on the program and you stay very faithfully on the program, you're usually going to do okay. But still, you should know, monitor yourself. If you are getting really tired and you're taking your glucose, you've had a meal, perhaps you just got too much glucose and you need to maybe back off a little bit. But I would talk to my doctor about this. I tell my doctor, look, doctor, I'm going on this diet and I don't want to get in any diabetic problems here. So what should I do? How should I handle the glucose? I know many diabetics who know just how they feel, they will inject or take what they need to get back where they need to be.
Okay, very good. A question from Sister Arminda is there such a thing as pre-metabolic syndrome? And if so, what are the markers for this?
Pre-metabolic syndrome?
Yeah, pre-metabolic
Pre-metabolic syndrome. Well, I've never heard that particular term used, but we looked at the very first one, overweight. Well, you can go by your BMI. If you're over 25, then you are in the overweight area. But if you're over 30, then you're in the obese area. So I would say as you start creeping into the overweight area, that is going to be pre-area where you don't want to go. Same way with your blood fats. The ideal blood fat, let's say your ideal cholesterol, is going to be 100 plus your age. Now, I'm 76 years old. I do not want a cholesterol of 176. I'd rather have it down where it normally is, around 120. So, and I don't know if this is what the person has in mind, but anything that approaches those areas, you need to take corrective action. See, when you go to the doctor and you get a blood test, they have normals. Trouble is with the normals, they're taken from a population of people who will probably end up with cancer or diabetes or blood or heart disease. So we have a column that says the ideal. What is the very best? The very best, let's see, I said cholesterol is be 100 plus your age. We just have what are better numbers, and we've got to find out what the ideal numbers are. And when we start getting up in other people's normals, those really are abnormal. In Japan some years ago, because 50% of adults in Japan are hypertensive, they changed normal to 139 systolic. So they didn't have so many adults who were hypertensive, but 139 is hypertensive. Just changing the number doesn't change the condition. So we need to get it down as low as possible. 120 over 80 to me is is borderline high blood pressure for me. Some people would click their heels if they got 120 over 80. Okay, that's it.
Okay, all right. That's I have to chuckle at that because I thought that was what we're trying to get to, 120 over 80. But anyway, the next question is, what advice can you give those who are type 1? Please. What
All right.
advice can you give those who are type 1?
Okay, now let me, I'll answer this two ways. First, I would do everything I just said. You've got, although with type 3, they've got to have the third meal, but it's got to be a small meal. But fats, they can't have the fats. They can't have the free sugars. They got to be in a whole food, plant-based, vegetarian diet. They need to go out and make sure their vitamin D is up there. They got to get their sunshine. They've got to know how to handle their glucose with exercise. Go out there and get lots of exercise. And you swing your arms. Another good thing about exercise, many people who have diabetes, whether 1 or 2, start to lose circulation in their hands and feet. They're always cold. They start losing feeling. As you swing your arms, you're moving through centrifugal force, blood out to the periphery, which is very good. Now, going back to the Heimlichs, they believe that, and we know this in science right now, all through your body, you have what's called stem cells. There are stem cells in your pancreas. If we remove every cause of the diabetes, type 1 diabetes, getting rid of our islets of Langerhans in the first place, and we live the best life possible, their theory is, and they've done this in animal studies already, your body can take those stem cells and turn them back into beta cells, which will start making glucose, insulin again. They've done this in animal studies. And my recommendation is you get as close as you can to the perfect Edemic diet. Now, I know Eden, it was a fruitarian diet. We will tell diabetics that you can have northern fruits, probably stay away from the southern fruits. The northern fruits, apples, pears, things that grow up in the northern areas. The southern fruits, your mangoes, your bananas, probably aren't the best ones, although bananas are extremely healthy food, especially when you start to get the brown spots on them. So anyway, I believe with all of my heart that type 1 diabetes can be reversed. We just have to follow God's plan and
Amen.
allow him to do what he wants to do with it.
Amen. Very good. Okay, we have a question from Sister Kashi. Would you please talk more about legumes in the diet? I read that they have too much starch and can lead to leaky gut, which could trigger autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you go to countries where they live off of legumes, I don't see the problem. Here's the key with the legumes. They've got to be well cooked. I mean, starch, potatoes are starch. You've got populations I've been to that they live on potatoes. There's many starchy foods. If you cook your legumes well, the way I do it, whenever I go to a place and they got beans, I'll take one, I'll put it on my plate, and I'll take a fork and I'll press it. If it fractures, I won't eat any beans, because if I eat them, they're going to tear up my stomach. If they smashed, then I'll put it in my mouth, because you can taste to see, you can feel it in your mouth if it's been properly cooked. If it's been properly cooked, that's what you want to eat. Leaky gut is caused by other things. It's going to be caused by improper cooked starches. All starch is a long chain carbohydrate, and some of them have to be broken down with the heat. Heating beans, cooking them right, it's going to break it down, very easy to digest. We give babies Zwieback, or in German they say Zwieback. It's what they teeth on. It's basically twice baked bread. That's what Zwieback means. If you make a piece of Zwieback and bite it, it's sweet because the glucose has the carbohydrate has been broken down into sugars. In the Bible, it talks about the disciples who walk into the field one morning and are picking the heads of corn and rubbing in their hands. Now, they didn't have corn in that time because corn is a New World food, but they were taking the barley, probably grains, and they winnow it in their hands, and then they take the grains. If you've ever done that, when the grain is in what's called the milk stage, it's going to be very sweet. When I'm walking through the fields in Eastern Europe in the summertime, I'll take one and just put it in my mouth. It is so sweet. But in the fall, when the water starts being withdrawn, now it is there's all these starch chains, I should have been saying starch before, have come together. And they've got to be rehydrolyzed to break them apart to be properly digested. There was a study done some years ago that said many brains are full of tiny lacunar scars from the not cooking grains well enough. We need to cook our rice longer, our oats longer, or all of our grains need to be cooked at a proper time so that it breaks down those long starch chains into individual glucose molecules. Much easier to digest, no problems then with the leaky gut.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, we have two more questions, Brother Miller. So thank you for this wealth of knowledge. It says, for the pain on the toes, what does that mean for a diabetic?
Okay, there's an experiment I like to do with my students, and I haven't done it here yet. I'm going to have to do that. You put a blood pressure cuff in the arm. You pump it up until the pulse stops. You don't let the pressure out and have them doing an exercise. The first thing is your hand's going to feel numb. You're going to feel the squeeze. Your hand's going to start to feel very numb. And you're going to start to feel, I can't really move this very well. Then you're going to start feeling pins and needles. Then you're going to feel pain, a lot of pain. And I mean, it's excruciating. To stop the pain, you let out the pressure, and it's gone like that. When a person is having a heart attack, they start to feel pain, left side of the chest, up into the left jaw, down the arm. It's because the blood vessels, the arteries are not delivering enough blood, and now the tissue's crying out for more oxygen. It's oxygen starvation. Diabetes destroys the vascular system. And that means the tissue is going to start saying, we need more oxygen down here. We got to have more oxygen down here. And it sends the pain, the message to the brain, and the brain interprets it as pain. So what do? Don't put it in hot water, because that's going to increase metabolism, which is going to increase the breakdown of glucose into water, carbon dioxide, and adenosine triphosphate. And the carbon dioxide building up will cause tissue death. Stand there and swing your leg. Get centrifugal force going. But what you've got to do is get diabetes under control so your vascular system can recover and you will get rid of that particular pain. That's the main thing that's happening right there. It can go from there then into diabetic neuropathy. You don't even feel anything anymore because you just don't, you've not fed your tissue down there with enough oxygen to really be viable.
Wonderful. Okay, and then our final question from Sister Mary is, if you live in the part of the country that doesn't get lots of sunshine like the North, are vitamin D supplements okay to take?
Yes, take D3, and you can get a Billy Light. You know, when a child is born with neonatal jaundice, they'll put them underneath the Billy Light, which will help take up the bilirubin out of the thing. I don't suggest going to tanning beds. That's going to be D2, and that really causes more problems. But you don't need a huge amount of sunshine, and you don't need direct sunshine at all. If you don't have a really thick cloud layer, you're getting enough UVB through the clouds for your body. We just need to get more. And the nice thing is B vitamins are fat soluble. B and C are water soluble, so we can wash those out. So I do take, I live up in Kentucky now. I do take D3 when I can think about it, because most of us are lacking in vitamin D in our systems. So yes, you can take that. But when the sun does shine, go out and take advantage of it.
Okay. And then we'll just throw one more in. Is D3 better with K2?
With K2, yes.
Okay.
I'd like to get, I take through Humana, I get certain amount of money every quarter to buy stuff. So I go ahead and buy some nutrients. That's what I buy. And Centrum, which is Centrum Silver for us people with silver hair. I got a silver hair on my chin. So I get a complex. Now, I've read articles of the fact that all this supplemental stuff is a waste of money, but I would rather err on a side of caution and take them than to be deficient in anything. But what we need to do is learn how to start to get our nutrients from nature. Let me just make one last suggestion. Minerals. Many people take mineral supplements. Get some good salt. You can get Celtic salt, Himalayan salt, good whole sea salt. Now, this is what a biochemist told me in Userfontein, South Africa. He says, you take some water, doesn't matter how much, just say a pint of warm water, add some of this good salt to it, stir it until it's completely dissolved, add more, stir it until it's completely dissolved. Keep adding the salt until it's reached its saturation point and the salt starts to gather on the bottom. It can't hold anymore. You take 1 teaspoon of that water and put it in your water bottle. Let's say you got a 1 quart water bottle, whatever it's going to, 7 ounces, whatever it's going to be. And that's the water that you drink. Now it's going to have a slight salty flavor, very slight, but you're getting 84 minerals that were found. And minerals are micronutrients. You don't need that many. And so you're feeding yourself these good nutrients that were laid down during the flood. And certainly the Himalayan salt was. So I think we're getting nutrients that God put in nature back then that we can take advantage of those things now. And that's what you should drink. It's not going to cause high blood pressure. The sodium is going to be very, very low, but you're going to be getting those tiny trace minerals that if you are deficient, you will have problems.
Okay. Well, there was one question, Brother Miller, that I didn't ask because I
Okay.
thought you addressed it, but perhaps you have more to share. It says, what is the correct preparation of legumes so that they do not cause gas and
Okay, yeah.
other discomfort?
First thing you do is you soak them. Now I'm going to say, how long do I soak them? I soak them overnight. And then I pour that water off. I put fresh water on and I bring them to a boil. Once it's to the boil, I pour that water off. I add more water and I bring it to a boil again. Now, basically, I cook in an Instapot. I'm off grid. I've got solar system. It can hold my Instapot. I will be heating it, bring it to the boil on my wood stove. I heat and I cook with wood. And so if you do that twice, usually you will have none of this gas. And basically, if you're not cooking your beans completely, you will have gas. Cooking them correctly and the way I just described is the best way to cook them. You shouldn't have that problem.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Brother Miller. And I'll turn it over to you, Sister Natasha.
Thank you so much for this information and sharing. And let's close out with a word of prayer. Most kind Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to learn how to care for these body temples. We present our bodies to you as a living sacrifice. Lord, this is a space where you say you will dwell with us. Lord, I pray that we'll be able to take all this information we've learned, apply it to ourselves, and share it with others so that this is an entering wedge for your gospel during these end times. Lord, I pray for your continued blessing over Brother Miller as he continues to travel and teach, and for each and every person here and those who perhaps will be watching the recording later, that they too will just come into a greater knowledge of you. Lord, we thank you so much. Be with everyone as they go about the rest of their activities this Sabbath day. Until we meet again, this is our prayer in your precious name. Thy will be done. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Brother Miller, for the
Pleasure.
wealth of knowledge. God bless you tremendously. And thanks to all who joined this morning. For those of you that are new to our Medical Missionary Sabbath Hour, we want to invite you to come again on next Sabbath morning at 9 o'clock on the same platform, the same password. And sometimes we read the Ministry of Healing. Other times we'll have speakers like Brother Miller with just a wealth of knowledge. So you're invited to come again and to let others know about this great information. And for those of you that have access to YouTube, you can also go to our YouTube channel, which is called Medical Missionary Movement, and the recordings are also there. So God bless everyone and be a blessing. Take care.